are you doing? I am back. I am back after a long, long, long absence. And the reason I was absent so long is because I've had, well, everybody's had a really bad year. My year started being bad, though, somewhere around the middle of October of 2019. That's when my cat took sick. And my cat took sick, and then she died in November. That kind of knocked me for a loop. And then I went for a loop on other things. My wife had surgery for a spinal stenosis. That was horrendous. That was in November as well, later in November. And from there on, it's been one crazy, hectic time. Some of which you're aware of, some of which has to do with me. In October also, I lost one nephew. I lost a second nephew in January. And so these were, I think it was January, might have been February. So much has happened, it's hard to keep up with all that's happened. But anyway, this is why there's been such a prolonged absence in not just this, but all my online material, and including my writing, including a lot of my artwork got put aside. And so it's been a deal for me. It's been hard to do anything like this. I haven't even wanted to do it, to be honest with you. I didn't have a big audience anyway. I still don't have a big audience. I'm sure that this is being listened to by about 5 people, maybe. And I'm fine with that. But I also know that it wasn't worth the effort while these other things were going on. But things have been kind of peaceful now for going on a couple of months. And, kind of peaceful is not very peaceful. I said I lost a second nephew not too long ago. My sister Georgia lost 2 sons. It's horrendous. But, the show must go on to some degree. Life does go on. And so I'm going to start trying to do this stuff again and see if I can't make something of it, or just have fun with it like I was kind of doing before. And I thought I'd ease in here and just do some fun little takedown of this leftist screed that I came across online. Now, I'm not going to give this person's name, nor am I going to give the name of the person who I'm friends with who reposted it. I'm just going to say that this is an older lady, an older white lady. Those things seem to matter these days, and in some ways they do, because it gives you a perspective of where it's coming from. I just think this gives an insight to how poorly the left is thinking these days. They are not able to make arguments that stand up to any inspection at all. And if I've done this right, then you're looking at the post right now, and you're seeing what I'm seeing. I'm going to go through these step by step, but first I want to read it in its entirety so that you can see their argument. I like to do that first. Then you can make your own decisions about it ahead of time, and then I'll go forward and take this piece by piece and tell you what I think of each one of these things. Okay, let me read it. I see the point of Trump supporters who don't wear masks or won't wear masks. They fear that they are being controlled by their government, but I also see the obvious contradictions. If they value freedom, why do they support the wall? If they hate the government, why do they ride on the nation's highways when they could just stick to rutted dirt roads? If they ride motorcycles, why do they wear those ridiculous helmets? If they hate education, why do they send their children to public or Christian schools? If they hate government interference, why do they cash the pandemic checks or unemployment checks? If they hate science, why do they go to the hospital? If they beat their wives and children, why do they try to hide it from the police? If they sorry, it's hard not to laugh. If they crave privacy, why don't they live in caves in remote regions of Alaska? If they hate people of color, why do they hire them to do all the work? If they hate government, why do they accept military benefits? If they hate government programs, why do they take food from government agencies? If they hate abortions, why do they let people die in a pandemic? If they hate paying taxes and public housing, why don't they live in shacks and grow their own sweet potatoes? If they hate liberals and socialism, why don't they return to the wilderness? If they hate government, why do they drink clean water, have decent working conditions, electricity, mail? If they hate government, why do they seek justice? If they hate freedom of speech, why do they want everybody to shut up? That's a good one right there. Wow. If they want to return to the good old days, why don't they have an outhouse and a good supply of corncobs? I want to point out that this is not some grade school dropout. This is not somebody who has a third grade education, or is living in a tenement in the inner city, and has been on welfare her whole life and has 18 kids. At least I don't know this lady too well, but she doesn't seem to be this sort of person anyway. Seems to be fairly educated. Seems to be she runs in a circle of people who have advanced degrees. The person I got this from has an advanced degree. In fact, he's a college professor. So I say this. I say this not to poison the well here, although I think that I poisoned it when I started laughing at the while I was reading it, because I say it because I don't want you to think that this is somebody going around and finding the stupidest person they can find, and then taking the stupidest thing that they said and putting it in front of you. That is not what's going on here. What's going on here is this is an argument that people make. I see arguments like this all the time on the left. This is not all that much different than any other argument that I see from left-wing people. It's a standard, almost boilerplate kind of thing. And what you're seeing is basically almost a cornucopia of bad faith arguments given that is based on almost bigotry. They're almost completely non sequitur, most of them. I mean, I don't even get some of them. If they, it's like, let me look at one here. Let's see. If they hate government, why do they seek justice? Well, those things are non sequitur. They don't. One doesn't follow the other. So anyway, let me go through these one at a time, and I'm going to comment on each one of them, and hopefully it won't run too long. But I'll just take whatever time I need to just what used to be called Fisk all of these points and see if there's anything good here, anything we can find. I doubt it. I don't think that there's going to be a good one in here. I don't think there's a legitimate criticism here. First of all, let's deal with the first point. As I see the point of Trump supporters who won't wear masks. No, you really don't. First of all, I don't believe that you see the point. The point isn't that they won't wear masks. It's that they shouldn't be forced to wear a mask. That there's nothing constitutional that justifies that. There is nothing in the Constitution that forces you to engage in healthy behavior. Now, if you think that's healthy behavior, if you think that's something that they must do, there's nothing that forces you to do that in a basic everyday sense. Now, it may not be smart for you to go into or take an example, if you, have unprotected sex. Okay, it may not be smart for you to do that, but it is not government's job to stop you from doing that. It is not their place to put a law on that, because you could say it's irresponsible and you could get lots of people killed. One person with AIDS, probably in the very beginning, one irresponsible. This is I believe it's true. It may just be a rumor, but I believe it's true. It was one patient zero for AIDS in the United States was a gay male steward person for a plane, and he flew around the country having sex with all kinds of men, and that's how it spread so quickly. I mean, it just gutted the gay community before anybody even knew what it was. Do you really want to do that? Do you want to say, all right, we're going to shame people who have given other people AIDS? Now that's not going to happen because the LGBTQ rainbow people are a protected class. But if you're just a regular person walking around, doesn't want to wear a mask for whatever reason, I personally wear them when I'm in public. I don't go in public very often because I don't like wearing them. They cause me to have difficulty breathing in them. They're very tight on my face. I can't get one that's big enough, and it's just the steam. I just breathe very hot apparently, and it's just I don't like to breathe in the CO2. I don't think it's healthy. I end up with a headache, so I don't like wearing them. I do wear them because I don't want to get people sick around, especially around me, because I have a wife that's not completely well and a daughter who's not completely well, and then their grandparents are not young, so it's it's prudent on my part not to do so, but that's not true for everybody, and the government doesn't have a right. It doesn't have a right to force you to do things of that nature. It is unconstitutional to force you to be extremely prudent with your health. And you could say it's rude to other people. Sure, it's rude to other people not to cover your mouth when you sneeze. But do you think that people should be shamed for that? Do you think that, or do you think that they should have the police call for them, or that gangs of people should surround them and yell at them? And do you think that the government should be passing laws that say if you don't cover your mouth when you sneeze, you're in violation. You could be taken away. It's not. There's nothing constitutional about that. And so the attack on that is coming from that. It's coming from government overstepping its bounds. It's not that most Trump supporters don't understand why people should wear masks. It's just some of them don't want to. Some of them are just simply not afraid of getting it. Look, if you're 23 years old and perfectly healthy and you don't know or have contact with anybody who's ill or is old and you get this virus, it's probably for the best. It's probably for the best that you get it because, you're probably going to be fine. It's going to bother you for a little while. You're going to be sick for a little while, and then you're going to get better. And then you're going to have a certain amount of immunity to it. And then you can go out in the world and do things. You can go to work. You can go to school. You can go collect groceries for your elderly parents who live across town. You can do all that stuff because you're not going to get sick again. Or if you do, it's going to be less. Unless it mutates or something, which is possible. But generally speaking, it may be to your benefit and to other people's benefit to actually get it. Now that's not the case for me. That's a different case, but this is the argument. Don't force people to do things that they don't want to do. It's not constitutional to do it, and it's not even prudent to do it. Okay, so we've already come across bad argument. All right, it's not just that they fear being controlled by the government. Although let's be honest, whenever the government can tell you how you are to expose your face in public, that is a massive, massive power grab by the government. This is not nothing like that's ever been done in the United States before. Nothing. I can't think of a single example where the government said you have to wear a clothing item on your body or else. Except maybe the bare minimums of public decency, that might happen, but that's it. Okay, so let's look at her, but I see obvious contradictions. Okay, if they value freedom, why do they support a wall? Okay, first of all, who doesn't value freedom? Hopefully everybody values freedom. You're saying if they value freedom, in other words, you don't, which is possible. There's people on the left, probably people on the right too, but definitely people on the left who don't value freedom. They don't value it. They just don't think it's that important. They think, as long as I get what I want basically in life, as long as I get to enjoy myself and watch my Netflix and eat my dinner and I get health care of some sort and whatever. Yeah, I don't care if I can speak freely. I don't really have much to say anyway, So it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me. I don't value saying something that's different. I don't have a religion that I want to practice, and I'm afraid that government's going to encroach on the freedom of that religion. I don't have much of a desire to petition a government that basically does what I tell them to do anyway, because I'm a leftist and the government's completely leftist. So it doesn't bother me. I'm perfectly fine with people losing their freedom because I'm getting everything I want anyway. So if they value freedom, why do they support a wall? Okay. Now, let's be honest. Let's be clear here. Whose freedom are we talking about? Whose freedom are we talking about? Are we talking about Americans' freedom? A wall does not stop Americans from doing anything. Nothing. Not a single freedom is lost by an American by putting up if you put a 10-mile high wall around this country, from sea to shining sea and all around every landlocked place you can think of, wouldn't change the freedom of any American at all. Not one single freedom would be changed. Nothing. Not a single thing. So I don't understand the problem here. But if you want to say it affects the freedom of Mexicans or something of that sort, then okay. I don't think it does. There is no freedom to come into a country that is not your country. That's not a freedom. Nobody has that freedom. It's like saying I have a freedom to go into your house. No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't have that freedom. It's not that. What you want to say is that you think that there should be no sovereignty, that the nation should have no sovereignty at all. That's not a lack of freedom. That's the very opposite of that. It's the very opposite of freedom. Because what you're saying is that a country does not have the freedom to decide who can and cannot come and go in its own nation. You don't have the freedom to do that. Sorry. And then the people who live there or live around there, They don't have the freedom to say who comes and goes, period. It doesn't matter. Your freedom doesn't matter. Your freedom to decide who enters and leaves your particular state or your particular city, your particular nation, it doesn't matter. So you're not actually defending freedom by opposing a wall. You are taking away freedom. You're taking away freedom from a nation to defend itself, to decide who can come in and who must stay out. You've taken away the freedom of people to separate between this kind of idea and that kind of idea. Let me tell you what I mean by that. If Mexicans decide that they want to raise taxes to 95% of their, of the income, and they want to legalize crystal meth, then that's their freedom. They're free to do that. But if we don't want to do that, we should not have to suffer the consequences of that. So a number of people say, oh no, this is disaster. People are high on meth and we can't get jobs. So we're going to go to America where there are jobs and where there's no crystal meth. Okay, now you can feel a certain amount of compassion and sympathy for those people, but we have suddenly inherited their problem. See, now we're not free to make our own decisions because we have to, they're not held responsible for their own bad choices. And we deal with that in Mexico all the time. Mexico has a bad government. Mexico makes terrible decisions in their government. That's why they have so many problems. They don't have problems because, there's a, because Hispanic people aren't hardworking or something stupid like that. They have problems because they have bad government. Same with El Salvador, same with Nicaragua, same with Venezuela, same with, a lot of these countries. They have problems because they have problems, because their government are not good. They're corrupt, they're immoral, and they lead to bad results. And we should not have to pay the price for their bad decisions, just like you shouldn't have to pay the price for my bad decisions. That just makes just common sense. Okay, so that one fails. Let's try the next one. If they hate the government, why do they ride on the nation's highways when they could just stick to rutted dirt roads? Okay, first, she says if they hate the government a lot, all right? Conservatives, as my understanding of them, and certainly classical liberals like me, do not hate the government. They hate overreaching government. They hate government that goes too far. I hate maybe too strong a word too. They just don't prefer that kind of government. They don't prefer an all-powerful, centralized government that makes stupid decisions based on things they have little or no understanding about. They don't like overregulation. They don't like things that kill jobs and kill opportunity. They don't like people who are far away deciding things for people who are closer on the ground and understand it better. They don't hate the government. They want the government to be small. They understand that government is a necessary evil, but the smaller it is, the better it works, and the less it causes problems for everybody. So they understand that. It's not a hate thing. It's not hate. It's just, how big do you want your government? How much do you want it controlling your life? How much do you want it in your personal life? How much do you want it controlling your school systems and your local businesses and things of that sort? How much do you want them to tax you and things of that sort? It has nothing to do with hating the government. Okay, so we can just move on from that whole hate the government slur. It's really just a slur. It's just a failure of their imagination. Why do they ride on the nation's highways when they could just stick to rutted dirt roads? Well, first of all, I live in a place where you can't go any place on rutted dirt roads. It doesn't exist. I don't even, I imagine that there are places. I lived in the South in Florida for a while. There were dirt roads there. There were roads made of clay. Even those roads were in some way affected by government. The government came in and put down clay all the time. So this is just not true. There's just no way to do that. We don't live in in 1835 where there's, well, we're just going to avoid that newfangled road they got there and take these side roads where there's just a regular, that just doesn't exist, okay? First of all. Second of all, we pay for those damn roads. We pay for the highways. We pay for them. There's no reason for us not to use them. Just because we may not be for raising taxes all the time and raising taxes for everything doesn't mean, A, we're against taxes for certain projects, public projects like highways. But second of all, even if we're against it, well, once we pay for it, once that comes out of our taxes, then we own that. It doesn't matter whether we approved of it or not. We paid for it. If you force me to buy a watermelon, you put a gun to my head and say, go buy a watermelon and bring it home, and I bring the watermelon home, and then you come to my house a couple of days later and you say, where the watermelon? And I say, I ate it. You can't say to me, well, why would you do that when you were so against buying the watermelon? Well, you forced me to buy the watermelon. So now I ate the watermelon. What the hell else was I going to do with it? But generally speaking, this is just a lie. This is just a misunderstanding of problem that most of us have with overtaxation. Taxation is usually corrupt and wasteful, and it doesn't go to the nation's highways. If it did, our nation's highways wouldn't be in such horrible repair. Now, what we see is it goes to grease pockets in all kinds of places where there's no reason for it. It ends up in politicians' pockets a lot. All right, let's move along. This is getting long, and we got a lot to cover here. If they ride motorcycles, why do they wear those ridiculous helmets? Well, first of all, it's a law, right? It's the law. It's forced. You're forced to wear the helmets because of the law, because there is a certain, there are laws to do that. Now you may say, well, you're forced to wear the mask, so why isn't that the law? Well, because they're totally different deals. All right, nobody has to ride a motorcycle. Nobody has to do that. That is a privilege in our society. It's not walking around. Okay, walking around is just a basic function of life. Riding a motorcycle is not. And so there can be restrictions on things that are not basic functions of life. Now you could say that driving a motor vehicle is a basic thing. We all need to do it. Okay, well, first of all, that's not true. I went many years without a car. But second of all, even to the degree that it is true, that particular activity is such that you are constantly, we're talking about lots of people could end up in trouble if you don't take basic precautions when it comes to helmets. It's not like walking around your neighborhood, or it's not like going in a store. These are basic, normal, everyday functions. And yes, I personally think that most people should wear a mask, especially when they're in public like that. But that's not the same thing as must wear masks. Whereas helmets, you got to have a license. You got to function on the road in a certain way, because it's not a basic function of life. If I tell you you have to have sex with your wife in the missionary position or something every time, you say, get the hell out of here. It's not your business. But if I tell you got to wear a seatbelt, But this is probably the closest that she has to a decent point. It's not great, but it's the closest that she's got. It's the best of the bunch. All right. If they hate education, you just got to love these bad faith arguments. You got to love them. Listen to this. If they hate education, now, okay, conservatives, classical liberals like myself, do not hate education. What we hate is indoctrination, which is what the school systems have become. There's no educating going on there. There is very, very little education going on in most public school systems. Now, Christian school is a totally different story, but in most public school institutions, there's just nothing going on. And you could tell that by talking to anybody who's come out of those systems. I don't mean to be cruel, but most of these people are just stupid. They're just stupid. They're morons. You ask them how many senators a state has, and they can't tell you. You ask them who wrote Hamlet, they don't know. You ask them who the vice president of the United States is, and you might get a blank stare. You ask them who the Secretary of State is, and you one in 20 might know that. You ask them who I saw a survey that was done to name the constitutional amendments within the First Amendment, and it was something like 4%. 4% knew that one of the rights that you have is to petition the government for redress. I don't know that. It's 1 in every 25 people know about that right. 1 in 25. So if you go out and you're in a crowd of 100 people, 4 people are going to know that they have that right. 4, if you're lucky. Might be lower now, because it was a few years ago when that came out. So, it's not that they have a problem with education. Conservatives are some of the most educated people I know. When I put them up against each other, it is the conservatives who are the more intelligent people. I'm sorry to say that. I mean, it's not that there aren't dumb conservatives out there. There certainly are. And there's not that there's not intelligent progressives out there, because there are some of those as well. But by and large, between the two, I've seen the statistics, and I just don't buy them. I don't buy them, because a lot of times what you find is what they call educated is really schooled. In other words, they've gone through a lot of schooling. They've gone through more schooling, but they're not educated. I'll give you an example. I have an associate's degree. That's all I have. I don't have a bachelor's degree. I don't have a master's degree. Certainly don't have a PhD or anything like that. And yet, I am far, far, far more educated than the average PhD who's 25 years old, or even 50 years old for that matter. Because most of those people Well, they really educated in their field. I don't doubt that. But when you get them out of their field, they know their understanding, their education is very, very shallow. Their education outside their field is extremely shallow. They know very little about most things outside their field. Now, they're in their field, they may have a great deal of information, and that confuses them to think that they're overall educated. So they may know an awful lot about Jane Austen, but they don't know squat about philosophy. They know almost nothing about sports. They couldn't hammer a nail if you gave them a hammer, a nail, and a carpenter. They couldn't do it. They just don't have it. And so, we don't hate education. We hate the indoctrination that we see everywhere in the public school system. It's horrendous. And the university system, it's horrendous. And you could tell it's horrendous because when everybody comes out all thinking the same way, there's something wrong with that education thing. Because it shouldn't be that way. I shouldn't read Hamlet and you read Hamlet and we both see Hamlet the same way. That should never happen. We have different experiences. We have different, beliefs. We have different religions. We have different, concepts. We have different sexes. We have different, ages, and on and on. There should be a lot of different interpretations and understandings. And I'm not saying in a moralistic, in a relativistic way, but I'm just saying in a way that's in some way, critical thinking. And you're not getting that at all. What you're getting out is these drones, and like one after another brick in a wall, and that's what you get. So that's what's going on there. Why do they send their children to public and Christian schools? First of all, because it's the law. If they can't, if they're not able to homeschool, they can't exactly say, no, I'm not sending my kid to school. They'll come and take your kids from you. But second of all, look, even a conservative, even in a bad school, still wants their kid to learn how to read. Look, I sent my kid to public school. I sometimes regret it. I probably should have homeschooled her. But I wanted her to have the interaction with other kids, and I couldn't give her that here at home. And so, plus I wanted to do my own writing, so it was, it's a little bit selfish as well. Anyway, so off to school she went, but every time she came home from school, I had to almost deprogram her. She would say, well, what did we learn? I remember her coming home and I said, what are you learning in school in history? And she said, well, I'm learning about Harriet Tubman. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with learning about Harriet Tubman, except she's in the second grade. Harriet Tubman is not that important a figure in history. Harriet Tubman is not George Washington. She's not Thomas Jefferson. She's not, Abraham Lincoln. She's not even FDR. I can name any number of people who are far, far more important than Harriet Tubman. And that's not to take anything away from Harriet Tubman. Nothing at all. I actually think very highly of Harriet Tubman. But why the hell is she learning about Harriet Tubman in the second grade when she has no idea who Thomas Jefferson is? She doesn't know. She doesn't know who wrote the Constitution. She doesn't know Monroe or Hamilton or Franklin. Well, she knew these people because I told them about them. She knew Franklin because she was born on the same day as Franklin, and Franklin's a hero of mine. But generally speaking, these kids don't know the very basic civics of their own country because they're being taught, about Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Sojourner Truth, and all these tangential people who are not unimportant, but not all important either. And so they're taught this ideology of leftism, so to speak, from a very early age. They're not taught what I was taught, what I was taught growing up, which was the fundamentals of the country, the most important people in the country. Now they're not even, it's even worse now because, they used to just not teach Thomas Jefferson. Now they teach Thomas Jefferson was a slave owner and a white supremacist who hated, freedom or something. So it's even worse now. All right, on to the next one. If they hate government interference, why do they cash their pandemic checks or unemployment checks? Again, same reason. You paid your taxes. Everybody else is getting the check. You cash your own check. You also got to pay your rent. You paid your unemployment taxes. Now you're unemployed. You take the unemployment insurance. You can't force people to buy something and then complain when they use it. Obviously, most people, including Social Security, they would rather be saving. Responsible people would rather save their own money. They would rather you not tax them to death, put that money in savings, and save it for a rainy day. People like us, we would be fine with that because we would be okay if the worst comes to worst, having saved all that money, having gotten all that money. But people who are irresponsible, they don't want any part of that because they want that check, they want that free money, they want that long unemployment where they don't really look for another job. They want that. Okay, moving along. If they hate science, why do they go to the hospital? Okay, here we go again. This is such bad faith. This is so bad faith. I wouldn't say about a leftist if you hate freedom or if you hate babies, why do you support abortion? It's such a bad faith argument. It's just so stupid, and it gets worse. When they get down to it, if they hate people of color, man, oh man, yeah, really, I try to be polite here, but F you. You know what I mean? Give me a break. If they hate science, why do they go to the hospital? Well, we do not hate, we do not hate science. We don't hate science, never hated science. I don't know anybody who hates science. There is some science that people disagree with. All right. There are some people who disagree with science. Science is not. There is no such thing as settled science. That is a fake term. It doesn't exist. There is science that is very, very probable. But if you are a scientist, you know that any science can be turned on its head with a new discovery. Okay. But generally speaking, do not hate science. In fact, if you look at through history, it has always been the Christians who. Science is the daughter of Christianity. Okay, it's the daughter of Christianity. It is not the enemy of Christianity. It is the enemy of something like Islam, but it is not the enemy of Christianity. Christianity stems from the idea that there is a mind of God, and God has an ordered mind. He has a mind that puts things in order, and that you can understand it, and that you can reason it out. That is a Christian idea. It doesn't exist in something like Islam. Islam believes that God's mind is unknowable, and it can change from one moment to the next. It's a random, scattershot, well beyond our understanding. So conservatives, who by and large happen to be of a Christian bent, not always, but often, do not have a problem with science. They don't hate science. They do sometimes think that your global warming science, your models are a whole bunch of crap, and they fit a political narrative, and they feed a political need, and they're used for political ends. There are such things as creationists. Those people are simply wrong, but even they don't hate science. They just think that your science is wrong. They're wrong, but so what? Why do they go to the hospital? Because they don't want to die. That's why. It's very simple. Again, it's just ridiculous. And some of them don't. I mean, the Christian scientists, they don't. They pray to themselves to get better. So it's not universal, but generally speaking, yeah, they go to the hospital because they don't hate science and because they want to live. If they beat their so ridiculous. If they beat their wives and children, why do they hide it from the police? Now, okay, I'm laughing at this because it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous accusation. Plenty of progressives beat their wives and children. Plenty of conservatives do not beat their wives and children. I happen to be one of the people who do not beat my wife and child. But listen, there's at least a certain element of truth here. There are many conservatives who believe that corporal punishment of children is an acceptable form of discipline, and that if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. And they believe that, and they're wrong. They could not be more wrong. On this, conservatives couldn't be more wrong. They when they say this, I get angry about it because it's just factually untrue. There is never a reason why you should hit a person, especially a small person. It is an absurdity. It is usually the reason you have to hit somebody is because you failed. That's the reason. That's always the reason you have to use violence is because you failed. Because you failed. Usually it's because when it comes to a child, it's because you failed to correct a problem prior to there needing to be force used. And if usually that's because you've been a bad parent. And now you're making up for your bad parenting by hitting the child. That doesn't help. Makes it worse. There's never an excuse to hit your wife. Never an excuse to hit a child. Unless you're acting in self-defense, and that's almost never. Why do they hide it from the police? Because it's wrong. I mean, the bottom line is that nobody should ever hit a child. But this is not universal to conservatives. There are plenty of progressives out there who hit their wives, hit their children. Look, the NFL is full of progressives, young black men who Black Lives Matter, and they're just beating the hell out of women all over the place. And there's Adrian Peterson, who has a history of hitting his children with a switch, a wooden stick, where he was whipping them to where they have welts all over their bodies. He was whipping them like a freaking slave master, and got suspended for I think a full season over it. And there he is, and the whole Black Lives Matter and the police are so abusive. These are progressives who beat their wives and children with a regular bias. It's just terrible. But it's not. Where conservatives do this kind of thing, they're simply wrong, and they should stop it. Okay, if they crave privacy, why don't they live in caves in remote regions of Alaska? Okay, I don't know that conservatives crave privacy more than progressives. I don't know where this comes from. This sounds to me like she might know two conservatives and they both are very private people, and so she therefore thinks conservatives are more private. I, I don't see myself as an overly private person. I'm a writer. I give out information that most people would never give away, and I'm also fairly public otherwise. I don't feel I don't feel overly private. I don't like crave fame or something, but I really don't. I don't want to be famous at all. But I don't feel like I have an obsession with privacy. Why don't they live in caves in remote regions of Alaska? I would like to. If the cave has the internet and enough Coke Zeros, I would love to live in a remote region in Alaska because it's a beautiful country there. I've been there twice now, and I just absolutely love Alaska. It's especially in the summer, the weather is so beautiful, and such beautiful country, and the people are so nice, and there's a lot of things though I wouldn't like because it's far away from everything. I mean, they fly in. They have to fly in a lot of these places because they got no roads that go to them. They're very isolated places, and so you wouldn't get a lot of things that you take for granted here. But generally speaking, it's really beautiful country up there. And but I'm not going to move there just because I want to get away from. I don't understand this one at all. So if they hate people of color, it's just garbage. Why do they hire them to do all the work? All right. There's almost no reason to go into if they hate people of color. I mean, but this is what they think. They really do think that unless you're against school vouchers, you hate black people. unless you are pro-abortion, you wince every time you see an Hispanic person. I don't get their reasoning behind this. It's just absurd. It's somewhat of a confirmation bias. It's somewhat of a bad faith argument, and it's somewhat of the idea that they don't want to make arguments. So it's easy to just paint people in a way that's just absurd. I can just if you're because basically what they're saying, if you're a racist, right? If they can just call you a racist, then they can dismiss your ideas. They don't have to listen to this whole talk. They can just dismiss you out of hand. You're just done, and then they don't have to think. They don't have to deal. They don't have to question their ideas. They don't have to think. Could I be wrong, or could there be some kind of mistake in the way I'm thinking? They don't have to go through that because they can just label you a racist. And if you're a racist, then you're not worth listening to, obviously. And it's so absurd. It's comical, but it's at the same time, not that they're not racist in the world, but I find that, look, I grew up in a heavily Democratic area, and I was a Democrat. My whole family were Democrats. And let me tell you something. One of the most racist people I've ever known, Democrats, without question. In fact, all the most racist people I've ever known have been Democrats. All of them. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't Republican racists out there. I mean, sure there are, but I just haven't known them. I mean, really, I'm struggling to think of a single one. I don't think that there's one. I could give you like 3 or 4 dozen Democrat racists, but I can't think of a single Republican. And part of that has to do with me. Like I said, I grew up around Democrats. I lived with Democrats. My family was all Democrats. My neighborhood was mostly Democrats, and so I came into contact with a lot more Democrats, and therefore I came into contact with a lot more Democrat racists. But that said, I don't know a single Republican racist. Not one that owns it. I don't know a single one, and I certainly don't own it. So, all right, why do this is even more fun. Why do they hire them to do all the work? Okay, all right, first of all, I don't hire anybody because I'm a broke poet. But second of all, I'm interested by all the work part of that. Right. In other words, white people don't do any work. The people of color do all the work. Now, I didn't grow up these people had silver spoons in their mouths or something. So they think that there's nobody out there. No white person ever cleaned a toilet in their life. No white person like me ever crawled underneath a dumpster and pulled out maggots with his arm, pushing them past his face because that's what he was made to do. Like I did. So it's just absurd. They don't only not know any black people, right? They don't know any black or Hispanic people, but they don't know any poor whites. So they don't have any experience with these people, and they just think that they don't exist, or if they do exist, they're just sitting in a trailer, with their Confederate flags, hating blacks. Well, we hate them darkies. Yeah, give me the government check. So anyway, it's just such a stupid way of looking at the world. All right, if they hate the government, why again?
Right? Don't hate the government. If they hate the government, why do they accept military benefits? Well, because they earned them, first of all, okay? If you were in the military and you retired from the military, you earned those benefits, they're yours. If you were in the military and you got, the college GI Bill and you earned that, then that's your money. I mean, what, it's like, if you hate people of color, why do you, if you hate the government, why do you, spend your money? Well, because it's your money. The government makes the money, right? So if you hate the government, why do you have dollar bills in your pocket? It's just stupid. It doesn't even make any sense. First of all, if you hate the government, why did you join the military in the first place, right? It's a volunteer army, right? And a volunteer military. So apparently you don't hate the government enough to join the military and get benefits and to the point where you get benefits. So you've re-enlisted probably, and you probably have served out some kind of, 20-year term or something, to the point where, if that's the deal, you hate the government that you went and worked for, and served in uniform. It's just so stupid. God. Next, if they hate government programs, why do they take food from government agencies? Well, first of all, most people who take food from government agencies don't hate government programs. If you're benefiting from a government program, you're usually for those government programs. People on food stamps like food stamps. People who are not on food stamps tend not to like food stamps because they got to pay for it and they get nothing out of it. But, let's say that there are people out there who don't like government programs, but yet get some kind of government aid. Their argument, their feeling may be that because of taxes being so high, they are held back from opportunity that would be available to them if taxes were not that high. So that would be an argument, but I doubt that that's an argument that most people at that level of subsistence are making. I don't think that this is, I don't think that that is a thing that motivates people to, say, vote Republican. If they're voting for Republican, they may be voting against their food stamp interests, but because they are also realizing that, well, look, there's a lot of people in the Democratic Party that do not like them at all. You may say, well, maybe it costs me, $50 a month in food stamps, but that's better than having a government that actively opposes me, doesn't want my kid to go to college or will hurt my kid's chances of going to college, or whatever it is. If they hate abortions, why do they let people die in a pandemic? Oh my God. All right. So first of all, I do hate abortions. Abortion is the greatest evil in the history of mankind. There is nothing worse than it. The Holocaust is not worse than it. The gulags not worse than it. If you put the Holocaust and the gulags together and throw in Mao and Cuba and anything else you want, you could throw in the Huns, you could throw in the Black Plague and wrap them all up in a bow, and it's still not as bad as abortion. Abortion kills 45 to 50 million people every single year worldwide. In this country, it's killed 65 million people since Roe. 65 million. Now, if you don't think they're people, then you probably don't have a problem with that. But I do think they're people. And so I think it is the single worst thing that's ever happened to the world. Ever. Okay? But as far as the pandemic goes, why do they let people die? Nobody lets anybody die. If somebody dies in the pandemic, in COVID, because of COVID, I have no control over that. I can't control that. You want to say, well, they're not wearing masks, so therefore they're spreading the disease around. Yeah, some people are not wearing condoms and they're spreading the disease around. They're also spreading the abortions around by not wearing the condoms. You're not talking about those people because we know who those people vote for, don't we? It's just ridiculous. It's absolutely absurd. A lot of the people who are conservatives are dying from the pandemic because they're essential workers. They're nurses and doctors and policemen and people of that sort who die all the time because they don't get to sit home and play scaredy cat in their basement. They're not letting people die. People just die. That happens in the world. That happens especially in a free world. In a free world, certain people are going to die unnecessarily. That's part of the thing about freedom. When you have freedom, things go on. Now, if you want to have no freedom, we can all just be forced to stay home forever. We can live on a cup of rice a week and maybe, grow our own sweet potatoes. That's next. If they hate paying taxes and public housing, that's just a bad sentence. If they hate paying taxes and public housing, why don't they live in shacks and grow their own sweet potatoes? Well, okay. There are some people who think taxation is theft, and they don't want any taxes at all. All right, the Stephen Molyneuxs of the world. Okay, I hear you, but that's not most of us. Most of us understand there has to be some level of tax. It just is. There's never been a society that doesn't tax. That's the one thing with death. It's guaranteed, right? Now, public housing is a different story. You don't necessarily need public housing. And I've seen public housing in my lifetime. My mother grew up in public housing. They were called housing projects. They had names. Danforth Avenue Project, Curry Woods. These were cesspools. These were slums. These were ghettos in which they packed in people, and they just turned into just almost like petri dishes of freaking crime and drugs and everything else. There's almost no place where public housing ends up being good. Almost no place. Almost always these places turn bad almost immediately. Okay? That's not everybody's fault in there, but it doesn't take a lot. It only takes, half of them maybe. Why don't they live in shacks and grow their own sweet potatoes? Well, I'll tell you what. I would love to grow sweet potatoes. But unfortunately, I only have a container garden. But actually, I wouldn't like sweet potatoes. Regular potatoes, I'm not a big sweet potato fan. But why don't they live in shacks? Because they don't have to live in shacks? That's because nobody lives in a shack by choice, except the Unabomber. If you own your own home, like I do, I own my own condo, all right? I don't want massive tax increases on my condo that I own, all right? I'm paying money for something that I own, but I'm not going to go live in a shack because I don't want to raise my taxes on something I own, okay? It's just dumb. If they hate liberals and socialism, they use the word, she keeps using the word hate, 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 hate. And that's the way they see people who disagree with them. They don't disagree on any kind of rational grounds. They just hate. That's all they do. You can't disagree with these people without hating. Hating is the single thing, the only reason why you disagree with a liberal, or they're not liberals, by the way. I'm a liberal. They're progressives. The only reason that you would hate a progressive or socialism is because you hate. You just hate. You're a person who hates. You just want to hate. You indulge in hate. Of course, they don't hate. None of this has to do with hate. When they call you a racist and they say all this garbage about, none of that's hateful. It's just you're hateful. All right. If they hate liberals and socialism, why don't they return to the wilderness? This is complete non sequitur. I don't understand this. I mean, I don't get. It basically says if they don't like cosmopolitan, urbanite people like ourselves, then and they don't want to suck down a martini, at the cocktail hour. Why don't they become, go to Walden's Pond or something? It doesn't make any sense. It's ridiculous. It's just stupid. Look, socialism's killed more people than any philosophy that's ever happened. So, what's not to hate there? If you know history, to know history is to hate socialism. To know history is to hate progressivism. I'm sorry, but that's true. You understand the whole eugenics setup of progressivism if you know history. Okay, if they hate government, again, hate the government. Don't hate the government. Why do they drink clean water, have decent working conditions, electricity, mail? Okay, progressives live off the beginnings of their causes. Often progressives come to a situation and they see something that is legitimately wrong. Like they'll see, children working in factories, and they'll say, this isn't right. These children are way too young to be working in a factory. They should be in school somewhere learning. And then they'll make those changes and then say, well, see, we made this decent change. Now you have to suffer all the rest of that we want to do, or you have to be for, children working in sweatshops. But it's absurd. It's an absurd idea. There's a limit. Having clean water is good. There should be regulations for clean water. Decent working conditions for people. That's acceptable kind of regulations that we should have. Electricity and mail, these are modern conveniences. I personally think that you could privatize the mail. Certainly could privatize electricity. These things would work out fine if they were. But I don't have a problem with these things being regulated in some way. And so it's just, again, it's ridiculous. They think, we did something. It's like, like they used to say about John McCain. It's like John McCain was a prisoner of war for years. And it was very heroic, some of the stuff he did there. And some of the stuff he did there wasn't very heroic. But then they gave him a pass like on everything. Everything he ever did wrong was like, well, you can't say anything about me. I'm a POW. You can't. And no, I'm sorry. At some point, you have to look at what you're advocating for now, not what you were advocating for in 1920. Okay, if they hate government, why do they seek justice? Again, don't hate government. As for justice, everybody seeks justice. Everybody seeks their idea of justice anyway. Certainly, if someone is criminally assaulted, then why wouldn't they seek justice? It doesn't matter They may seek justice from the government. They may not. I remember the beginning of The Godfather, where he goes to the Godfather and he says, "Listen, I went to the government. After my daughter was raped, they didn't do anything for her. What can you do for me, Don Corleone?" And he says, "Well, let me, we'll take care of this problem for you." Kisses him on the cheek a couple of times. They go rough the guy up and raped his daughter. So justice is a natural human desire, a natural thing that people want when they've been wronged, in any case, at any time. If they hate freedom, let's say this about justice too. All right, there's justice that you seek for a wrong that was perpetuated against you, and then there's justice that you're seeking for yourself that has nothing to do, very little to do with yourself. And so if you're seeking, a lot of times the problem with social justice warriors is that they're seeking justice for something that either didn't happen or happened so long ago as to be completely obscured as to who's at fault, or they're seeking justice just for the sake of personal gain, and not because they really want justice. It's just a profit grift more than anything. If they hate freedom of speech, why do they want everybody to shut up? Well, this is rich. This is really rich coming from the left. They've used every tactic in the world to silence people, and big tech is doing it now. I've been blocked off Twitter forever. I can't get back on there. I couldn't even change my name. They won't even let me do that. They completely shut me down. I think they shut down my my computer code or whatever, the IPS or whatever it's called. And so, you don't see leftists, you don't see this happening to people on the left. Not on the normal left. And the basic problem is, I didn't even say anything. I said I defended a Muslim. I defended a Muslim from a anti-Semitic attack on him. And so it seems ridiculous, but that's what happened. And so now I'm permanently blocked from that platform. I do not hate freedom of speech. I am a avid, complete free speech absolutist. Short of criminal speech, which would include, snuff films, child pornography, things of that, quote unquote speech in which there is an actual crime taking place while the speech is, quote unquote speech is going on. I am a complete free speech absolutist. I think you should be able to say whatever you want, whenever you want to say it. And I don't think that there should be repercussions for it above and beyond social stigma. In other words, I don't think that you should be able to be fired from your job for it. I think you should be able to say that you hate black people and never want to have anything to do with any of them and keep your job. That's how much of a free speech advocate I am. Now, do I want that person to work with that work? I want that person working for me? Not really. Do I want to work with that person? Not really. Do I understand why that person loses his job? Yeah, I kind of do. But I don't think that he should lose his job. I think all you do when you cut people's speech out is make their speech go underground. I don't think that you change their minds. I think let the speech come out and then let the better ideas win. I don't want everyone to shut up. I want everyone to speak. When everyone speaks, the good ideas usually win. Most times they win when everyone can speak freely. What we're seeing now, the reason we're having so many problems in this country is because people like me are not free to speak. Because now I'm not going to get my poems published. Now I'm not going to get my books published. Now I'm not going to win the contest because I'm speaking freely about this stuff. So if I didn't speak freely, I would get all that stuff. What would happen is the conversation would be poisoned and the bad ideas would win because all this stuff that I said here, which I challenged, all these bad ideas, it wouldn't get said and it would just proliferate. All these ideas would proliferate. I guess it's a hard word for me to say, proliferate. They would all just expand and go out and nobody would challenge them ever. And they would go forth into the world without any kind of critique. That's a bad plan for the world, not just for other people's thoughts, but my own. And, there's no way to correct your own thoughts when nobody can critique them, when nobody can say, listen, Jim, you're all wet here. You can't say to yourself, well, you know what, I kind of am all wet. And it's okay to be all wet once in a while. It's okay to be wrong once in a while. God knows I've been wrong plenty in my life. I was a progressive at one time. I'm not anymore. Because some people took the time to tell me why I was wrong. And I listened. And now I understand why I was wrong. But if you don't have the freedom to speak freely, you can't ever get to that place where good ideas win out over bad. So this is just garbage. This is not true of conservatives. It's certainly not true of me, a classical liberal. And I certainly don't want everybody to shut up. I want everybody to speak as much as possible. If they want to return to the good old days, why don't they have an outhouse and a good supply of corncobs? This is how she finishes this mess of ideas. Okay. There is a lot to dislike about modernity. There is a lot to dislike about it. there was also a lot to like about it. A return to the when people talk about returning to the good old days, when they sing the the All in the Family song, those were the days. When they sing that stuff, what they're saying is not that they don't want MRIs, or they don't want indoor plumbing, or they don't want a knife that actually cuts something. Okay, they don't want to do finger paints on cave walls and all the rest of the garbage. That's not what they're saying. What they're saying is there used to be a time when people in the city, and my nanny used to talk about this, my grandmother, I call my grandmother Nanny. She used to say that she used to be able to go out on the porch. She called it the stoop. She would go out on the stoop, or go out on a fire escape even, and they'd be able to sit there at night. They would leave their doors open, and they weren't worried about being somebody coming in and killing them or robbing them. They weren't worried about massive drug use. They could send their kids out in the streets to play. They knew their neighbors, and their neighbors knew them, and they cared about each other, and they took care of each other to some degree. Somebody was sick. I used to have a neighbor, Miss June. She was just a beautiful lady. She had cancer, lung cancer, and they took out a lung. And her husband left her, but she moved into the condo next door to us. And she used to leave little packages on the door for Sophie, my daughter. And she's just a sweet lady. She'd trade books with me, and she was into mystery novels, so she read a lot of J.A. Jance and stuff like that. And so but she got sicker, and the cancer came back, and she was dying. And I used to go over to her house, and she was starting to spend more time living with her daughter because she was unable to keep up with her own place. And so I would carry boxes up the stairs to her car. And I remember they were just so grateful that I would do this as a man. She was a sick woman. She couldn't carry these heavy boxes of books upstairs, and her daughter was a slight woman herself. So that's what conservatives are talking about when they talk about the good old days. They're talking about a certain morality, a certain community, a certain values that used to be prevalent, used to be in wider distribution, and they were defended, and they were you pulled your own weight, as they say in the song. You pulled your own weight. You didn't expect other people to pull your weight. You didn't expect a handout. Sometimes you needed a hand up, but you didn't expect a hand out. Never. And you looked after each other, and then at the same time you looked after your own. You took care of your own, and you kept to yourself unless there was serious need to not keep to yourself. And you supported the country. You loved the country. You loved Jesus Christ. You loved you loved the history of the country. You loved the accomplishments. When they would put people on the moon, you cried. You cried because it was so beautiful that your country could do such a wonderful thing, and that mankind could do such a wonderful thing. Those are the good old days. The good old days are, all the artistic achievement and all the great projects that we've done as a country, and as all the universities that we built, the great Western civilization, the saints who live such virtuous lives that we imperfectly try to emulate. That's what we mean by it. We don't mean we want to go and have a freaking, lose indoor plumbing, or get rid of our Instant Pots, or trade in our Netflix subscriptions. Probably should trade in that garbage. I'll just close with this. A lot of these people are decent people. They're decent people, but they have a perverse view of other people. We've grown to be utterly incapable of seeing the things from the other point of view. It's a lack of imagination in some ways. It's a lack of imagination. Those people are simply incapable of understanding a different mindset. So I sometimes wonder how they can even be writers, because in order to be a writer, you have to understand the other person. That's why Stephen King, for all his many talents, and he has many talents, he's great at building characters and descriptive detail, and he has a wonderful prose style, and he can build a plot. He can't do an ending, but he can build a plot. But so many of his villains are just garbage. I mean, Carrie's mother, who's just this religious fanatic, she's just garbage. It's just not real. It's not a real person. Real people aren't like that. Real people aren't like Greg Stilson. These are rantings of a disturbed individual who cannot see the humanity in other people, and people who are different than they, or think differently than they do. And in that way, it makes them corrupt. It makes them unable to see the humanity in other people. And that's to be avoided at all costs, because that's when the horror starts. When you stop seeing other people and you start seeing them as only avatars of hate, you say they hate people of color, they hate the government, they hate abortions, they hate liberals and socialism, they hate the government, hate the government, they hate freedom of speech, they hate the government, they even hate education. So when you see them as that, and nothing good's going to come of that. Nothing. It's a poor view of the world. It is a disturbed view of the world. Okay, well, I've gone on a long time here, but I wanted to address this, and I have. I didn't think I could put it in a Facebook post, and I was probably smart not to do that. So here it is. Listen, thank you for listening to this newest Poepintion. I hope that you got something out of it. If you made it all the way through, that's amazing. Thank you. And as always, God bless you.